motivate.
Your job is to make people safe. Can you stop the killing, please?
So will you answer my question, Mr. President?
From ABC News, President Clinton answering children's questions, a 9X Children's Special. Now reporting from the White House, Peter Jennings.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, especially boys and girls, and welcome back to the White House, really. This is the second time that President Clinton has invited us back to the White House so that he and a group of children we've invited from around the country can exchange ideas about the state of the country and the state of the world. It's a chance for him and for them to talk about their dreams. So we hope you'll stay with us this morning. If our timing is right, the President is just coming down from upstairs in a house which we all know he loves very much. Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning, Peter.
Thank you for having us back, sir.
I'm glad you're back.
You really have spent a lot of time studying this house, haven't you?
I have. You know, every president but George Washington has lived here. And so it's really the story of America. And it's a great honor to live here. So I like to know the history of it, and I like to know the things that happened to the people who lived here and what happened in which rooms and things. I've kept up with it pretty well.
You all know there are a lot of kids in the East Room waiting to see us, but surprising to me at least, a number of them asked us whether or not the President had to live here. And I just asked you that a moment ago.
I don't know.
No, we'll have to find out.
Isn't that funny? I don't know. I don't think anyone's ever volunteered to live anywhere else, except once when there was a big renovation of the White House when President Truman was president. I think he had to spend more than 2 years out of here, across the street.
We have actually a little, we're going to go into the East Room now, but we have, just to introduce you or reintroduce you in many cases to what this house is like, a little history package while you and I walk in. Ready? Great.
Thanks.
102 years ago, the citizens of the New Republic picked up their newspapers and read this curious announcement. The government was offering $500 to the winner of a design competition for the President's house. The house should be big enough for official business, but not so big it violated democratic ideas. 9 proposals were submitted, including this one, which Thomas Jefferson sneaked in under an assumed name. Jefferson lost. The winner was an obscure architect named James Hoban. When George Washington saw the plans, he said they were still too grand and insisted the house be 2 floors instead of 3. John and Abigail Adams became the first residents on November the 1st, 1800. Every U.S. president since that day has called the White House home. Since then, turbulence and taste have all changed the presidential home. In 1814, British troops set the building on fire, and it took $250,000 to build it over again. The fire-singed walls were painted white, and the name White House was born. In 1902, Teddy Roosevelt added a whole new wing, the West Wing. And 7 years later, William Howard Taft put the Oval Office there. And by 1942, the presidential staff had grown so large, the East Wing was added. First ladies used to have their offices there. Hillary Clinton is the first wife to set up office in the same wing as her husband. And there is the White House on a very sunny, lovely day in Washington here, and we are, of course, in the East Room, which has its own great sense of history. And here are all these boys and girls who've joined us from around the country. You notice the President's tie, everybody?
See that? This tie was designed by a 13-year-old named Kelly. It's called Save the Children, and it's part of a series of ties designed by children for the Save the Children Foundation. It's a group that works on the problems of children in poor communities and poor neighborhoods around America. And my wife and I have been involved in it for a long time. So they take the drawings of children, turn them into ties, and then sell the ties to raise funds. It's great. I have a lot of them.
I bet people send you ties every day of the year, don't they?
Every day of the year, just about.
Yeah.
But I especially love these. I bet I've had 20 of these ties. They're great.
Well, there are a lot of questions for you this morning, Mr. President, so we're going to go away for just 1 second, and then we'll have you and all these youngsters from around the country talk to one another. We'll be right back.
Live from the White House, President Clinton answering children's questions will continue in a moment.
Hello, I'm Mary Alice Williams. Right now, you and I and our children are having a very special visit. 9X is sponsoring this event because kids have issues, just as grown-ups do. During this program, you'll also see some kids 9X spoke with who have some important things to say. We hope you'll watch. They're our children. We could learn a lot from them.
Live from the East Room of the White House, this ABC News special, Answering Children's Questions with the President of the United States, continues.
Now, Mr. President, I said a lot of these kids had questions. For how many of you got questions for the President? We're going to be here for several days. You don't mind that, do you?
No,
Let's get right to it. Kevin, how about you?
Okay, my first question is...
Where's the mic person there?
Give him-
Attaboy.
My first question is, for those children who wish to pursue a college education, what are you going to do to guarantee that there are jobs for them when they get out of college? Today many adults who have graduate degrees, bachelors, they have a hard time finding jobs. They have as good a chance as those who are straight out of high school. What are you going to do to guarantee that when I get out of college, I have a job waiting for me?
Good question.
I don't know that I can guarantee it, but I think we can make it more likely. Perhaps the main reason I ran for president was to try to restore the economic health of the country. And what I'm trying to do is to follow policies that will generate more jobs in America. I've tried to bring our deficit down, get interest rates down to create more jobs. I've tried to open more markets to our products and sell more American products overseas. I've tried to train people to do the jobs of tomorrow. And I've tried to take the technologies that we developed when we had a big defense budget and turn them into jobs in the peacetime economy. And in the last 13 months, since we had this meeting last, we created over 2 million new jobs in this economy. And let me also say, I know it's tough for college graduates, but let me tell every one of you one thing. Your chances of getting a good job are still much, much better if you first graduate from high school, then get at least 2 years of further training, and finally if you get a college degree. The unemployment rate in America for college graduates is 3.5%. The unemployment rate for high school dropout is 11.5%.
So the answer is they stay in school.
So the answer is, even though it's tougher than it has been for college graduates, you still have a much better chance if you stay in school to have higher incomes and to have a job.
Let's go over the other side here. Who's got a question there? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. President, why are you fighting a war in another country when you have a war right here?
Which war?
The war in Bosnia?
We're not fighting a war there. We're trying to help them bring the war to an end because many people are being killed and because the war could spread and because we have an obligation to try to support that. But we don't have soldiers on the ground there. I am trying to fight the war right here at home. There's a bill in the Congress now that I'm supporting which would put another 100,000 police officers on the street to make the streets and the schools safer, would give more money for young people for programs to help them resolve their differences peacefully, would take semi-automatic weapons off the street, and would help us to fight the war here at home. I agree that the war here at home is killing more people than a lot of wars overseas, and we're trying to fight that one. And you're right, we should be fighting it.
Right here in the front row, what's your name? Corey.
I was wondering, with all the racial problems going on, such as people not treating each other the same way, do you have any plans for solving that problem?
Well, that
A
is
lot of people worked hard on their questions here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. There is a lot of racial tension in this country today. And I think there are two things that we have to do about it. First of all, we have to remind the American people that we have always been a multi-ethnic, multi-racial country. We've always been a country with a lot of different racial and ethnic groups. And every time a new group came along, they've often been subject to prejudice. But what's made our country great is that we have been able to successfully blend in people of different races and religions and ethnic groups, let them respect what's different about them and still live together. And I spend a lot of time working on that, talking to young people, talking to groups, trying to bring people together. I've brought more diverse people into my government than any president has in the past. The second thing we have to do is to try to give a future back to all of our people. A lot of times people fight with one another if they think they don't have any opportunity. If we had more jobs and better education and a better climate in America, less crime, then people would be more relaxed and better able to appreciate one another. But, you know, I don't know if anybody's here from Los Angeles, but just for example, Los Angeles County alone has people from 150 different racial and ethnic groups. In Bosnia, you mentioned Bosnia, people from basically 3 different groups have been fighting and killing each other. So we've been, with all of our problems, we've been pretty successful, but we've got to know that our differences, look around this room, our differences in America are our strength. We live in a global economy, a smaller and smaller world, And the fact that we have so many different races and religions and ethnic groups is a good thing for America, and we have to learn to like it.
Mr. President, Cora, are you happy with that answer, by the way? Yes. You are, eh? Okay. If you're not, you're entitled to tell them. We know a lot of these kids, Mr. President, because we went out and we looked around the country to find kids who were sort of representative of various ideas in the country. One of them is Tanya up there. Hi, Tanya. We did show the President just a little bit about you on the monitor here, and then we'll get you to talk to him.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tanya, great. Yeah, I enjoyed your comment.
This is Tanya. Tanya sort of came to our attention when she met your Vice President at a meeting
at Dunbar.
That he had here. Exactly.
You a student at Dunbar? Good. Yeah, I recognize the film.
All right, so let's come out of the film now. All right, Tanya, your turn.
Good afternoon. My question is going towards inner city kids. We feel as though the baby boomers have forgotten that the chaos that we create was given to us by you all. We want the problem to be stopped, but we need help. A lot of us are tired of hearing that we are a lost generation when we are not. We are a generation of renewal. We want to know, what steps are you going to take to give us the hope, the pride, and the strength that we need to succeed in the future and to become strong Black, white, Chinese, African-American people in the society 10 and 30 and 20 years in the future.
Tanya, can I ask you a question before the President answers? Do you think the President can do a lot about that? Do you think he makes a really enormous difference here?
He makes a very enormous difference, but one thing a lot of people fail to realize, if you don't come into the communities on positive notes, when you come for negative notes, it really angers a lot of people. It's angered me a lot, and I want the media and you also to know that I wanted to leave Mr. Gore very baffled, and I'm glad I left him baffled, because I want him to understand that you need to come when positive things happen, and not just come when negative things happen.
Well, I agree with that. Let me just make two comments about that, and then I'll try to answer your question. We at least do come. I mean, he and I have been out there, and my wife has been out there. We have been in inner city communities. We have walked streets that you don't normally see the president walking. We have been to places you don't normally see the president go. And I agree that we should support success stories. I was in Detroit last week, and sure, Detroit has a lot of inner city problems. They also have perhaps the best job training program of its kind in America for inner city kids, putting them in very high-wage, high-tech jobs. So I visited that program because it's a success story. It proves that all of our children can learn. So I agree with that. We shouldn't just show up when something terrible happens. The second thing I want to say to you is that essentially everything that I do is designed to try to give young people like you some hope and some structure and some opportunity back. I agree that the generations ahead of you have left you a pretty lousy situation. You know, you've got all these kids that are born into families where there was never a marriage. You've got all these neighborhoods where the jobs have disappeared. You've got all these places where the schools have in effect been given up on. And that's not your fault. You just showed up. I mean, you're a child. You shouldn't have to deal with that, except to do your best. So what we're trying to do is to find ways to rebuild communities, rebuild schools, and bring the jobs back into the community, and at the same time to follow policies which strengthen the family unit instead of undermine it, which encourage people to take responsibility for their children and reward them if they do it. Let me just give you one example. The welfare system has often encouraged families to break up. We're supporting a welfare reform program that will encourage families to stay together as well as to get jobs. We've got a tax system that we've changed so that when taxes are due this year, 16.5% of the American taxpayers, working parents with very modest wages, are going to get a tax cut to help them raise their children better, to strengthen them. We've got school reform bills going through Congress now to try to help strengthen schools to have more uniform excellence. Now, those are things we're doing. I also have to tell you, though, you know, when kids get in trouble, they get in trouble one by one, and they have to be saved one by one. So we also need, the president needs soldiers common workers in this battle. And that's why what people do in every school, in every neighborhood, in every family, in every church is important.
Probably got some potential soldiers here.
You bet, a lot of them.
Yeah.
But you're right, we owe you a better deal than you're getting, and I'm trying to give it to you. But y'all are going to have to do your part, too.
Now, there are a lot of serious questions I know here, but somebody had a question about the White House itself and about the President's Day. Well, they've all got shy and serious on me. Now, a lot of them wanted to know whether or not you find this too big a job sometimes and wonder how you get everything done in one day.
Sometimes I don't, and sometimes it is too big a job. But I have a lot of help, for one thing. A lot of good people work here, and we work hard to try to organize the day well. And so I try to get up in the morning, go run, see my daughter before she goes off to school, and then I come in and I start every day with a briefing on national security. Has anything happened in the rest of the world that could affect the United States that we have to be concerned about? Then I get briefings on what's happened in the United States, and I read clippings from newspapers around the country to see what's happened. And then we start work, and we just work through these problems. And normally I finish at about 7 o'clock at night, sometimes a little later.
Work every day? Mm-hmm. No, don't take a day off every week?
Sunday. I try to take Sunday off, but I don't always make it. But I try to work half a day on Saturday, take Sunday off, but Monday through Friday I work till pretty late at night.
Oh, I think some of us know that.
And sometimes till 12 or 1 o'clock at night at home when I read.
Now, there have been some pretty trying events on your watch in the year and a bit since you have been president, and one of them occurred in California, and we have a young lady here this morning. Hi, Annie. You're getting tired, aren't you? No, you're not? Oh, good. All right. I want the president to take a look at the television monitor here so he knows a little bit more about you.
This home video of Polly, taken last summer, shows the outgoing 12-year-old who aspires to be an actress. Her mother released the tape today in hopes it would help in the search for her missing daughter, kidnapped at knife point from her own bedroom in Petaluma 1 week ago.
I felt very bad when Polly was kidnapped. Once my cat died, and I said when Polly was stolen, you can get another cat, but you can't get another sister. I used to like to go for walks with my dog, but now I don't like to do that anymore because I don't feel very safe. I'm starting to get sort of scared because there's so many bad people out on the streets. I don't like to go to bed alone because, like, you can't see very well in the dark, and so, like, anybody can just jump up behind anything and you can't see anything, and then they just grab you. I like to put a lot of ropes around here and bells because they're like alarms. These are my bells that goes on my door, and this rope right here is for a bad guy. At night when they come in, they go like this. This nightlight is also something that's good. See, if you come near it, it flashes on. This is my guardian angel right here. It's a picture of Polly looking down to us on the clouds.
Well, of course, that is Annie Nickel, who is the sister of Polly Klaas, who, as you know, was kidnapped in Northern California, became enormous news in the country. We asked Annie to come, partly because she wanted to, but partly because when we talk to kids around the country, enormous numbers of them are concerned about their safety. So, Annie, away you go.
Well, the other day when I was on the plane coming here, I asked my mom, do you think I'm going to live to grow up? And my sister Polly didn't live to grow up, so I didn't feel that safe. And my question is that I just don't feel very safe, and I want America to be safer for children.
And you think the president could do something, don't you?
I agree. I think I could. Let me say, first of all, you're a brave girl to come here and let us see your story. As you probably know, I talked to some of your family members, and I'm doing what I can to change some laws. And let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, there are people who get paroled out of prison who have serious problems and who are very likely to repeat them, who should not be released. That's one thing that your sister's case has made people sensitive to. And that's why we're working on some laws to identify people who are serious threats to society, who will likely repeat their crimes and not let them out. The second thing we have to do is to try to make our communities and our streets safer. That's why I'm trying to pass a bill to take these assault weapons off the street and to put more police officers on the street to make the streets safer. And then there's a lot of violence against children that occur in their own homes from family members and in schools. And we are trying to start programs now all across America where people learn to resolve their differences in nonviolent ways, to stop hurting each other and shooting each other and acting on impulse. You do live in a country that's too dangerous, and we have to make it less dangerous. And it is a huge obligation that I feel, and I think about it every day. You know, I have a little girl too. I want the children of this country to be able to grow up on safe streets and safe schools and safer homes. And I think that there are some very specific things we can all do about it. We also need to change our attitudes. You may see pretty soon a public service announcement I did with a young woman from Washington, D.C., a 14-year-old girl named Alicia Brown. She went to the 6th funeral of a friend of hers just yesterday. 6 of her friends have been shot. And so we did this public service announcement together. It's going to be on television, talking to young people and asking them to help us turn America away from violence.
When you were young, Mr. President, do you ever remember being in a room with kids and people asked you if you felt safe?
Never.
No.
And when I was a kid, you know, people beat each other up. I mean, that's the only thing you ever worried about was somebody coming up to you on the street or in an alley or something and jumping you and beating you up. Nobody ever shot anybody. There were none of this. I mean, to speak of, there was very little of this. And the kidnapping's the kind of thing that happened to your sister, much more rare then. It's much worse today.
What do you think, Annie?
Well, for one thing that I think is that I think that other people shouldn't be released from jail, and they shouldn't be stealing as much children as they have been stealing.
I was looking at some figures. 4,600 kids were abducted last year. That stuff you put in your bedroom, did you really feel the need for that?
I did feel the need.
Did it make you feel better when you did it, that you were taking charge of your life and you were trying to protect yourself?
Mm-hmm.
You think the president's on the right track, though?
I think so.
I'll try, Annie. I think about your sister and the children like her all the time. I'm working hard on it.
Okay, let's go over here. Thanks, Annie, my dear. She's had such a good time. You know, Annie's had such a good time in the White House today. Where's your dolphin? Eh? He's had a tour of the White House, hasn't he?
Good for you.
So it was a very rewarding morning for her. Yes, love. You, right here. That's it.
Well, Mr. President Clinton, I know you get a lot of questions, but this is just a little thing about you. I think you're such a decent and honest person, and I really believe in you and trying to make everybody happy. And I think we kids have to take the responsibility, because we should know who's bringing in the drugs, the guns, and if we just report it in, that would really make a difference. And also that would make a really big difference is that most of the criminals and people who sell drugs, they don't feel loved. And so I think when the moment you're born, you have to feel loved. You should tell your child that you love them very much.
What a nice idea.
Let me just say on the two things. First of all, remember what I said. No matter what I do, the president has to have partners all over America. Everybody's got a role to play. Everybody's important. In most schools where there are drugs and guns, some other kids who don't do drugs and don't have guns know about it. They could report it. They could help to get it done. They could organize themselves into groups in each school and say, we don't want drugs in our schools. We don't want guns. We don't want knives. We don't want violence in our schools. That could make a bigger difference in that school than anything the president could do. On the other question, I think you're right. One of the things that we have to do is to find young people who are likely to get in trouble and try to reach them before they get to the point where they're hurting other people. Because a lot of young people never felt like they were loved. That's obvious to me. I see it all the time.
Do you know, a lot of people who work here in the White House have children. And one of the things, this is a nice treat for you, Mr. President, perhaps we asked several members of your staff to show us different rooms in the White House with their kids. And if we look at the monitors here now, we can see Henry Cisneros, one of your members of your cabinet, showing his kids the cabinet room. We'll be right back.
Well, this is the cabinet room, and it was built during President Roosevelt's tenure.
you guys. And this is where the president meets with all of his advisors and the department.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this first meeting of 1994 for our administration.
That's where the president sits, right over there. You see the chair that's a little bit higher. Its back is higher than the others. Can anyone sit wherever they want? Every chair has a plaque on it, and the plaque designates what cabinet officer sits there. You're sitting in my chair, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. And Therese?
Who are these people on the wall?
Well, around the wall are figures from American history. Here's Abraham Lincoln, one of the most beloved of all presidents, and Thomas Jefferson, who happens to be a favorite of President Clinton. As a matter of fact, his name is William Jefferson Clinton.
Live from the White House, President Clinton answering children's questions. We'll be back after these messages on this ABC station.
In a word, I'd have to say ignorance. I'd have to say that people aren't aware of different cultures to think if it's a different culture, then it's not right.
I think there's racism because people think that they're better than other people because of their skin, and they just feel that way, and that goes on to their children.
They think we was made for somebody to own us.
Maybe they just had something bad happen to them, and they haven't got over it yet, and maybe that's why people don't get along so well.
I just think that because you're another color, they think that you're nothing.
I think it has to do with ignorance. You make fun of something that's different because you weren't taught it. It seems different to you.
I think it's because people prejudge, and that's where prejudice comes from.
And we have such a mix of cultures all put together in one place, and it's so hard to learn how to interact with each other and with ourselves. And everyone's really busy blaming things on other people.
I think some people are different and they might be scared of someone different, but basically we're all alike.
To think that we're about to enter the 21st century and we still have all of this stuff hanging over us, and you would think that that was stuff from the past, like the 16th century, the 17th century. People didn't know any better.
I think people shouldn't be, fighting just because somebody's a different color, because we all are God's children.
Violence abroad, in the Middle East, in Russia and Bosnia. These were also the headlines. And a young girl named Zlata, whose Sarajevo diary chronicled the tragedy of war through a child's eyes. When we come back, Zlata will meet the president.
Live from the White House, President Clinton answering children's questions will continue in a moment. This is ABC. This ABC News special, President Clinton answering children's questions, continues. Once again, Peter Jennings.
Not in here.
Welcome back to our morning in the White House. Nicole. Microphone? Got it, girl.
I had a fun question to ask you, and I was wondering, Mr. President, in elementary school, we had to pass a physical fitness test to pretty much get an A, and you got a president's award or certificate. And I was wondering if you've ever tried or ever thought of passing the test, or if you've even looked at the test that we have to pass.
I haven't, but I probably should. I imagine I could pass it since I jog every day and do a little work on my weights and do some other things. I probably could, but I'll do it. I'll check on it. Anna. If I don't make it, then I'll have to get myself in shape.
Anna, right next door. What?
I read a book called Socks in the White House, and it said that Socks had a bulletproof case. Does he really?
You're kidding.
He can stand behind something that's bulletproof, but most of the time he's just out in the open. That's just a funny thing to say. It was a joke.
All right. Now we have a couple questions from around the country. Remember last year, sir, we had some people on the telephone. Well, this year that was kind of difficult, so we've asked some people out around the country to ask you questions if they've wanted to, and here's one on tape.
My name is Jessica Jones. I'm 11 years old. I'm from Red Bank, Tennessee. My question is, what are you planning for the improvement of public education?
That's pretty general. Let's keep you going for a while.
Well, very briefly, we've got two bills designed to help the public schools. One encourages schools to try all kinds of new and different experiments to improve education, but gives them some real standards so we know whether kids are learning or not, no matter where they live. The other one gives opportunities for kids to move from school to further training if they don't go on to college. So young kids that don't go to college still have a chance to get good education, make a good living.
Good. Now, we have a guest from overseas. Somebody mentioned Bosnia this morning. Right over here to your right, sir, is Lata Filipovic, who comes from Sarajevo. And a lot of the kids in here last night, Lata knew all about you because of your diary. Perhaps we should show people at home a little bit first about your recent history.
I feel like a swimmer who did not feel like going into cold water and he's forced to. I feel surprised, sad, unhappy, and frightened. I keep wanting to explain this stupid politics to myself. Among my friends and in our family, there are Serbs and Croats and Muslims. It's a mixed group, and I never knew who was a Serb, a Croat, or a Muslim. Now politics has started meddling around, and simply don't understand it. June 29, 1992. Shooting, shelling, people being killed, despair, hunger, misery, fear. That's my life. I now realize that I'm living through a war. I'm witnessing an ugly, disgusting war. I and thousands of other children in this town that is being destroyed. Today was truly, absolutely the worst day ever in Sarajevo. The shooting started around noon. The gunfire was getting worse. We ran down to our cellar. We listened to the pounding shells, the shooting, the thundering noise overhead. At one moment, I realized that this awful cellar was the only place that could save our lives.
Welcome to Washington again, Zlata. Your
Thank
question
you.
for the president.
Well, usually people, when they start war, they say, with this war we will get things. But I think usually all of them lose things. And I think it's really big stupidity. And I would like to ask you, is it war? Is it end of that stupidity close? Is it closer?
I think it is closer. And I agree with you. These people started fighting in your country because they wanted territory for people who were just in their own ethnic group. And yet, as you pointed out, people who lived in Sarajevo, they had friends. They didn't know if they were Serbs or Croats or Muslims. They lived together. But people from outside brought this war on to try to divide the country up. I think it is closer. You know, yesterday we signed an agreement here in Washington between the Croats and the government of Bosnia, which is mostly Muslim, but not entirely. And now the question is, will the Serbs agree to sign on? Will they agree to give up some of the territory they took so that everybody can live with a fair piece of land and we can stop killing the adults and the children I think we're closer, and we're working very hard on it.
Okay. You've been very determined back there. Ram, is that your name? Mushtaq. I'm sorry, Mushtaq. I apologize.
Do you like to be known as the president of the healthcare program?
Be known? Yes.
Sounds a bit like a setup, doesn't it?
Yes, I do. I mean, because I want every American family to have health care, and a lot of them don't now, and millions who have it can lose it. And every other major country in the world with a good economy like ours gives all the families health care, and we don't, and it's not right.
Anybody else got a question about health care? Because, oh, goodness, lots of them. Yes, right up here. Microphone. Your name is?
Mickey.
My name is Mickey.
Hi, Mickey.
And I was on welfare, and you say you encourage people to get jobs when they are on welfare. But as soon as I started working, they took away all my benefits, including my medical benefits. I was better living off welfare than I am now working because I'm not receiving any medical benefits anymore.
Absolutely. I talked about you and people like you in my State of the Union address. I pointed out, you asked the health care question. If you're on welfare in America today, and if you have children or if you're just yourself on welfare, you get covered by a medical program paid for by the government. If you get off welfare and you go to work in a job that has no health insurance, you start working and paying your taxes so that someone who stayed on welfare can still get health care, and you don't get it anymore. It's not fair. And you're right, the best thing we could do to end welfare as we know it is to give everybody health coverage so people would never be encouraged to stay on welfare. Good for you. Thank you for saying that.
Mr. President, do you think that people have too high expectations of what you can really accomplish?
Well, sometimes. That's why I always try to say, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do, and remind the American people that in a democracy, the people have to do a lot of things. We have to change this country from the grassroots, and a lot of the changes we have to make have to happen inside us. Our attitudes about violence and our attitudes about young people without regard to their race and what they can do. We got to change our whole way of thinking about things.
Okay, here's a question right over here. Name is?
Ebony. My name is Ebony.
Ebony.
Hello, Ebony.
My major concern is education. My question to you is, why is it necessary to bus children out of their neighborhoods to get a quote-unquote equal education? Shouldn't all schools offer the same program since we're all being taxed?
The answer is yes. All schools should offer the same programs and should achieve the same high standards of excellence. One real problem we've had in America, let me just say this real quick, I don't want to get into a long answer, but in America, our school system has usually been a local school system, run community by community, paid for by the state and local governments, and with a little money from us at the national level. What we're trying to do now is to move toward greater equality. The state of Michigan just voted in a historic vote to take most of the property taxes away from schools and give state taxes so everybody could get a more equal education. And it's going to be one of the great crusades in the next 10 years, giving all kids, no matter where they live, a decent education.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'm going to follow that up, if you don't mind, because we have a young man here more than determined to ask you a question about education. Reginald, right? Reginald, we've got a piece of tape at your school. Before you ask the President your question, let's take a look at that.
My name is Reginald Birch. I'm 11 years old and I attend Brightwood Elementary School. The first thing about Brightwood is 67 years old. And in 67 years, repairs haven't been done to the school. When it rains, the rain seeps through holes in the walls. Windows have to be nailed shut. Plaster falls from the ceiling, and that's dangerous. It can hit children. I mostly try and avoid the places where I know things are going wrong, except the only place I can avoid is the bathroom. Now this is the boys' bathroom, and you see it has cracks in the windows. The windows are beginning to rot. It doesn't work. You have to twist this one with all your might to get that much water, and this is supposed to be the hot faucet, but this water is cold. Here, the stalls have no locks, so you can walk into the stalls anytime, you know. This is my first time in the Brightwood boiler room. It seems to be that water evaporation is coming from dirty water, and pipes have been here for 67 years and haven't been repaired. It's brown and rusty. You can see a lot of dirt is on it. Water is on the floor. Sometimes you do get kind of angry about how the school is. The whole school needs to be remodeled.
Well, somebody observed, Reginald, you're at least going to make an investigative reporter when you get up. You got all the moves there.
Didn't he do a great job? Give him a hand. He was great. Good job. So,
what's your question for the president?
A lot of students are drawn away from the education, and one thing a lot of kids talk about Super Nintendo and things like that. What do you think about video games, and do you know that you are on a video game?
no, am I?
Yes, you are. I just like to tell you this. On Super Nintendo, it's a basketball game called NBA Jam, and it's a code for Bill Clinton and Al Gore, and then you have your own certain slam dunk and everything.
You're kidding.
I have to confess the vice president's a better basketball player than I am. But I like the sport, I think, even more than he does. Let me tell you something about this. What happened was in the last 12, 15 years, a lot of the schools got in financial problems, and it was easier to put off repairing the buildings and take care of the buildings instead of laying off personnel or other things. And it's a terrible problem. And I think there's going to have to be a real effort in every state in the country to fix these schools up. A lot of these old school buildings are better structurally than newer buildings, but nobody's taking care of them. And I appreciate you bringing that to public attention.
Mr. President, somebody asked a little while ago what the difference was like between having this and meeting the press. Do you like to go to meet the press in the press briefing room?
I do. I do that there. Sometimes I meet the press here, you know, when we have foreign leaders here, and when I have press conferences, we do it here sometimes.
Well, we've asked David Dreyer, your Deputy Communications Director, to give us a tour of the press briefing room. We'll be right back.
This is where they ask me hard questions.
I want to talk to you about this room. You see this room, honey?
Yeah.
This is called the press briefing room.
Okay.
2 minutes? 2-minute warning, folks. 2-minute warning.
And what happens is the people who write the newspapers and the people who make up the news shows on TV sit in these seats and they ask questions of President Clinton.
The First Lady is quoted in a magazine interview today as ascribing the Whitewater matter to...
I don't see any President.
Well, he isn't in the room right now. Deep below this floor, you know what there is?
Telephones?
There's telephones, but even deeper than that, there's a swimming pool.
Swimming?
That's right, that's right. But this room didn't exist, and there was a swimming pool here, and President Nixon filled in the swimming pool and built this press briefing room. Your name's Alessandra Dreyer, is that correct?
Alessandra.
Alessandra Dreyer, right? And you're going to be 6 years old?
Alessandra Ann.
Oh, I'm sorry. Alessandra Ann Dreyer. And I'm David Dreyer. I'm the Deputy White House Communication Director.
And you're Daddy.
And I'm Daddy.
Live from the White House, President Clinton answering children's questions. We'll be back after these messages on this ABC station.
If you're in some kind of trouble, you could just go to your parents and talk to them.
Because they teach you things that you don't know yet.
So when they grow up, they won't have to learn everything when it's too late.
Sometimes children don't know how to obey, and if a parent doesn't tell them what to do, they will never do it.
They don't talk, and they just spank them. They don't know what they're spanking them for, because they never know what they're because they never know what they did wrong. They never tell them what they did wrong.
Because if they didn't talk to you, then you wouldn't know what's going on, and you'd just be very confused.
If parents don't talk to their children, pretty soon their children are not going to start talking to them.
Like all these different robbers and thieves or ghosts, even though I know there aren't any. I think there aren't.
Like when somebody knocks on the door and you don't know who it is, and they keep on banging, and you're home alone.
Drugs on the city streets and how people depend on them.
And like with crime, I mean, everyone might be wearing bulletproof vests. I mean, little babies wearing bulletproof vests.
Abusive people, and you're afraid that if you go out with the wrong guy, then he could do something. Or if you get married, then your husband will beat you.
When I go to the park, there's a lot of drug dealers hanging out there, and they're looking at you. You never know if they might come up to you and say something, and it'd shoot you for nothing.
Well, when my family fights, gets mad at each other, and they ignore each other.
This ABC News special, live from the East Room of the White House, answering children's questions, continues.
We have another question on tape from across the country. I'd be curious to know what you think of this one.
Hello, my name is Michael Marcus. I'm 17 years old and I live in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. My question to you, Mr. President, is with all the unfavorable press that you have been receiving, how are you able to focus and concentrate on the policies that you wish to pass through Congress?
Well, what I do is I answer the questions the best I can, and I recognize that the press is like a herd of cattle sometimes. They just get swarming on some issue and they become obsessed with it, but the American people are obsessed with their own lives. Look at the questions I've been asked today. I try to focus on those things. I try to respond to the press, deal with the negative questions, and then keep my time and my attention devoted to the things I was elected to deal with. The crime problem, the health care problem, the jobs problem, the education problem, the things that I've been asked about today.
Is that hard sometimes, though?
Sometimes it's very hard, but that's a big part of the test. I mean, this whole job is like a character test. You know, you're always being measured and tested and pushed, and I believe it is my job to keep focused on the things I was elected to do. So that's what I have to do. No matter how hard it is, in the end, that's how I'll be judged in history, and that's how I'll judge myself.
All of these questions, you're perfectly right, are very much on the news. In fact, you mentioned cattle. This is Cotton over here. Cotton, who's from Boulder, Wyoming. I know you have a question about cattle. Where's the microphone for Cotton there, guys? Well, first of all, hold it. Let's show the president a little bit about where you come from.
This ranch has been in our family for about 5 generations. We get up at about 5. My brother and I usually take turns milking the cow. Well, we gotta work pretty hard all as a family. We work together as a family. We're not making very much money at all, but I think we're richer in some ways than someone from California who's never even seen a cow. In the winter, we keep our cows on our own private ground, and we feed them the hay that we get off our own ground. In the summer, the cattle are on federal land over there, and this land here, our private land, we got to get the cows off so we can put up the hay. The government is thinking about increasing the grazing fees, the amount we pay the government for our cows to eat the government's grass. And if they increase that to where we can't pay it, then we won't be in business and won't be able to ranch as a family. Most of the other ranches in this area would go out of business. Right now, I have plans of being a rancher, and I want my kids to learn this way of life, and they probably won't have a chance to learn it because of the grazing fees being set up.
Okay, Cotton, what's your question?
Mr. President, my family are ranchers, and so are many of my neighbors. Part of the year, we graze our cattle on the BLM and U.S. Forest Service lands. I know a lot about ranching, and I know a lot about taking good care of the environment. Mr. Babbitt and your administration's new plan is to double the grazing fees. This will really hurt my family, and our business cannot afford it. But it won't just hurt our family, it'll hurt all of our neighbors and all the businesses in our town.
What's your question, Cotton?
There's the grazing fee is not what is not the total cost of raising on public lands. So, Mr. President, I want to know, do you understand what it actually costs to graze on public lands? Because there are a lot of non-fee costs, and if you don't understand, I'd like to explain them to you.
After the program, I'll be glad to talk to you more about it, but let me briefly say to all of you what this issue is about. A lot of the land in the West belongs to the federal government, but has to be used and should be used by farmers and ranchers out there. The fees they pay are about 1/4 the fees they pay to graze on private land, much less. So there's a big push in the Congress, and has been for years, to ask them to pay more fees. On the other hand, if you charge them too much, they can't stay in business. Your governor, Mike Sullivan, basically told Secretary Babbitt and me that the original plan that we proposed was too burdensome. And he went out there and started having meetings with the farmers and ranchers, basically changed that plan. While this plan would call for the doubling of the fees over 3 years, it would also give farmers like you, who take good care of the land, a rebate. That is, the fees wouldn't go up that much if people are actually proving that they're doing their best to maintain the land. So the real purpose of the fee increase is not to get more money for the government. It's not that much money. It is to encourage us to keep the land, maintain it, and make sure people will be able to graze it for generations to come. So it's a question of how to strike the right balance. And I'll be glad to talk to you more about it after the program.
Okay, terrific.
Okay, oh, one more thing.
Another very contentious subject right in the front here. Brody?
Well, we'll do it after the thing. Go ahead. We'll talk some more after the program. We can do it. Go ahead. Brody, you're up.
As you know, Mr. President, this has been concerning me for years. But as you know, all the illegal drugs, we get told how these can really hurt your body. They can mess you up, not to smoke marijuana or sniff cocaine or anything like that. But there's one drug that kills a lot more people than all those illegal ones combined. This drug is legal, and it's a cigarette. And every day, about 1,000 Americans die from smoking. I have a three-part question here. The first part is, why are cigarettes still legal? The second part is, what is your administration doing to try to help? Oh, God.
Brody?
Discourage people from smoking?
Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's to prevent smoking cigarette companies from targeting their ads at children with Joe Camel and all those other people.
Brody, why don't you just hang on there for a second? There's a third part. Brody works, I just met him a few minutes ago. He works so hard on this question overnight. You've done terrific. It's a subject that every kid here is interested in.
The truth is, the reason cigarettes have not been declared illegal is because most Americans don't believe it should be illegal. They know that it's dangerous. The warnings are printed there, but most people believe that it's not as immoral as using drugs or as destructive to the fabric of society. And so there's not much sentiment to make cigarette smoking illegal. It's a deeply embedded part of our culture. On the other hand, for many years, cigarette smoking was declining, thank goodness, among Americans. Now we see some evidence that smoking is increasing among some people, particularly younger women, which I'm very concerned about. So our Surgeon General, Dr. Elders, who's responsible for talking to the American people about their health, has really launched a real aggressive initiative against cigarette smoking, and especially against the second thing you talked about, which is targeting ads to young people, which I think is so wrong. I think it is really, really wrong. And we have to speak out against it and try to get people to change their practices. And I will keep doing that. I also favor increased taxes on cigarettes to discourage people from using them. The people in Michigan just voted for a 50-cent a pack tax on cigarettes and to give all the money to the schools. And we need to see more initiatives like that.
How old are you, Brody?
10.
Let me just make one other comment. Just like what Cotton said, there are a lot of good people in America who still raise tobacco. And we should have funds set aside for them in the cigarette tax to help them convert away from raising tobacco to doing other kinds of farming so they can actually make a living. There are an awful lot of good people who do that work in states in our country, and we can move them, help them to do other things, and we should.
Brody, let's pass the mic down to just two down on your left here, okay? Oh, it's that third part.
What's your third part?
And I got the third part to this.
It's what?
And it is, will you commit, you and your administration, to making the secret list of ingredients on cigarettes public? Because food companies have to publish theirs.
Oh, you know, well, we've been making a big deal out of that about the fact that more nicotine has been put into some cigarettes. And we're going to try to get to the bottom of that and tell all of you what's going on. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. That really bothered me when I heard that there was more nicotine going in to make sure that people were really hooked on them.
Okay, next.
I have a fun question. And if you had one wish, what would it be?
If I had one wish, what would it be?
Yeah.
I would wish for a safe and secure childhood for all of our people, all of our children.
Are you happy with that answer?
That's what I want. I mean, I think if all the families in this country could give their children a safe and happy childhood, a lot of our other problems would be solved. Now, There's a lot of elements in that, but that's what I want. I mean, I think that would be my wish.
Now, if my recollection is correct from a year ago, when the President meets with his staff tomorrow morning, he's going to tell them about a lot of the questions that you have raised. So how would you like to see the room now where the President has his staff meetings every morning? This is the Roosevelt room, and this is the Deputy Chief of Staff, Phil Lader, showing it to his kids.
Girls, this is the Roosevelt room. Do you know why it's called the Roosevelt room?
That's Franklin Roosevelt, and that's Teddy Roosevelt.
Exactly right. This is the room where the President has lots of meetings and where his staff have meetings all day long.
Let me leave you with a thought.
Whitaker, you pretend you're President. Mary Catherine and I will be here for a meeting. Come on, Mary Catherine. Oh. Yes, Madam President.
Daddy, please come home before I go to bed tonight.
Live from the White House, President Clinton answering children's questions. We'll be right back after these messages on this ABC station.
Probably Jim Abbott would be really major hero in my life because he's a one-arm pitcher and he made it all the way to the big leagues.
Leonardo da Vinci and Tom Edison.
My mom, because she does stuff for us. And when I lose something, she'll find it for me. And I was getting chased one day, and she yelled them away, and then they left.
I look up to Keith Haring for his work with AIDS and his artwork.
Sometimes I don't always tell her, but I'm really thankful because my mom's really great.
To me, everything my father is, I want to be. And he's like, to me, he's number one. He comes first before anything. Me and my father don't get along once in a while, but he's somebody I really love deeply inside.
My hero is Martin Luther King because he fought racism with protests and boycotts. He didn't fight it with guns like other people.
My mother, because she came from a really poor family, and in order to get through college and through school, she had to get all A's in order to get a full scholarship, and I'm really proud of her.
My Aunt Shelley, who died 3 years ago, she's my hero because she knew she was gonna die of leukemia, but yet she still, she had a lot of courage and she was very bold about it.
My teacher, Miss Bridges, because like when I have trouble in a subject that she teaches, she'll help explain it to me.
I'm my hero because I always make my future and I don't really depend on somebody. I want to be different than everybody. I want to do something nobody else has ever done.
Last year, a group of children from around the country came to the White House. They brought their questions and concerns to a man they thought could help. We have caught up with a few of them recently to see if anything has changed since they were here.
I have a twin sister, and we go to the same school, but she can't speak. So because she can't speak, they put her in a special class. But she uses computers to speak, and I would like her to be in a regular class just like me.
So you just want your sister to have a chance?
Yes.
Good for you. Maybe she'll get it because we were here talking about this.
And she did. Alba joined Anastasia in a regular 4th grade class last fall. It's been a big challenge for everybody, but so far, Alba is holding her own.
It's not fun not to have a house. I can't have friends spend the night over my house because I don't have a house.
Venus has slumber parties now. She found a home with a foster family while her mother goes through a drug rehabilitation program. Venus loves school and continues to be on the honor roll. Several private boarding schools are impressed by Venus's academic success. She is waiting to hear from them about the possibility of a scholarship for the fall.
Fear is part of your life. You're scared because you don't know what's going to happen once you turn that corner. My class is mostly empty. The reason why some don't come is because they're probably scared the same as me.
Chicago senior Michael Cruz says things are better now. There are more security guards at school. He feels safer. The desks around him are now full. Michael has decided to make a career of helping inner-city children, and to that end holds an after-school job at a neighborhood youth center.
This is my school yearbook, and I've highlighted the names of the kids like me whose parents will lose their job because of the spotted owl.
Elizabeth's dad is still out of work, and Elizabeth feels betrayed. The president pledged retraining and new jobs to make up for the jobs lost in the logging industry. Elizabeth feels they were promises made and promises forgotten.
Since I got AIDS, this affected my whole family. Of course, my dad's out of work. We only have insurance till the end of February.
Joey's dad is still unemployed. The family will lose their health insurance in April. Joey, who is 14 now, travels around the country talking about AIDS and prevention. And then there was Pernell Brewer, the young man from Louisiana who lost his brother to cancer and blamed the pollution in his town.
We all believe very strongly that you, as an individual, do have the know-how and the courage to go about and tackle this problem and many others. And we do have faith in you.
We'll do it for your brother, okay?
Did the president keep his promise? When we return, we'll hear again from Pernell.
Live from the White House, President Clinton answering children's questions will continue after this. This is ABC. Live from the East Room of the White House, this ABC News special, Answering Children's Questions with the President of the United States, continues.
Welcome back to the East Room, and we're joined again. Nice to have you back, Pernell. Pernell Brewer is 13 years old from Gary, Louisiana. President keep his word to you pretty much?
Sure. I've noticed some changes in the chemical emissions and some of the reactions from the management down in my area since the airing of the show. And I would have to give credit to President Clinton and just the show itself for making that accomplishment. But I've been thinking about the issue since that past year, and I was worried about the fact that the problem may repeat again. And the old saying goes, time flows like a river and history repeats. So I was worried that if this continued for such a time and the environmental issue wasn't brought up repeatedly, then everything may go back to square one. So, Mr. Clinton, I would like to ask this time if at any time possible the environmental issue can be brought up some other time and that the issue be readdressed so that to ensure that the environmental problem in my area doesn't flare up to the point where it was. Because I've been doing some figuring, and I've come up with the fact that if we took all polluting factors in our world today and just stopped them immediately, in 100 years, things would have changed very little. And I would have to blame most of this, part of it, on greed, because I was talking to a friend of mine, and he mentioned that, and he gave me an example. He said, suppose you had 2 redwood trees in your backyard, and someone came along and asked you if you wanted to, if they could cut this tree down, these 2 trees down for $100,000 or $1 million, better yet. Now, most likely, a person would be persuaded to cut down the trees, but then in the process, they'd be destroying a total of 2,000 years of growth.
All right, Pernell, hang on a sec there and let the President maybe talk to that point.
Well, first, I'm glad things are getting better. You know, we can now give people like your families all over America information about what kind of chemicals are being produced in their area so they can use it to work at the grassroots level to try to reduce it. We're also trying to reduce air pollution by 90% in toxic chemicals. And we're trying to protect poorer communities. You know, a lot of the worst pollution in this country is in poor communities, in rural areas and cities. So those are the things we're doing. We will stay on it. We'll keep talking about it. The Vice President especially and I have talked about it a lot. We'll keep doing that. And I'm glad to know it's better than it was.
Okay, can we go up the... This is another issue that I know is in a lot of kids' minds. Kimberly.
President Clinton, earlier you said that when you were in high school and school, you felt safe. And a lot of times I hear my parents and grandparents say the exact same thing. And I keep wondering, at that time, prayer was mandated in schools. And since the prayer was taken away from public education in public schools, the crime rate in schools has really gone up. I was wondering if you felt there was a connection, and what is your opinion of prayer in school?
I don't know that you can say that there is a connection. I do believe that 30 years ago, you had more coherent families, you had less violence, you had less unemployment, and you had and values were taught in our schools more explicitly. The reason the Supreme Court made the decision on prayer is that they said that no government should order people to pray or should say exactly what prayer they should give. And I agree with that. I mean, that's the First Amendment. That's what we were founded on. On the other hand, I think schools should be made available to religious groups. I think it's okay to have moments where people pray in silence. I don't think that prayer at sporting events or graduations is wrong, in my opinion. And I think that the most important thing is that we ought to start talking openly about what we need to do in our schools to promote values, truthfulness, law-abidingness, respect for others, and to lift those things up and talk about why kids shouldn't have kids, why people should not practice violence. I think those things should be put out there. I think that we could waste a lot of energy trying to revisit the extent to which the government could order people to be involved in prayer or order prayer services. But I think that it's okay for schools to permit moments where people can pray on their own if that's what they want to do. But the main thing is the schools ought to be teaching values. I think they should be. And when they got out of it, it was a big mistake.
Patient.
Mr. President, I was wondering, why do you think that abortions of teenagers and any women should be able to stay legal in America, and what about it makes you think this way?
I believe that it should be, I think that until the child, the present law is that until a baby can live outside his mother's womb on its own, it is up to the mother to make the decision. And that's what I think the law should be, because in America, there is a huge difference of opinion. The American people are divided deeply on it, about when the soul goes into the body, when a person becomes a human being. And not everybody agrees that all abortion is murder. Not everybody agrees that every abortion under any circumstances is wrong. Therefore, I don't think that all the mothers should be made criminal. I think that abortion should be safe. It should be legal, but it should be rare. I think we should liberalize the adoption laws. I think we should encourage people to adopt children. I think we should make it easier for people to adopt children across racial lines. But I don't believe, in my own view, I support the decision of the Supreme Court that this decision ought to be a matter between women and their doctors. I don't think everybody else in society can say with absolute certainty that they know that. And there's even big differences in the religious community over it. So I don't think that one view should be imposed on everybody when there's so much difference of opinion about it.
Patience, why don't you give the mic to the young woman next to you, Jamie, right beside you. Jamie?
I think there's a big problem in America about fathers not taking care of their children, not paying child support. And I'm wondering if there's anything you could do to help.
It's a huge problem, billions of dollars a year. there are a lot of children who are forced onto welfare because their absent fathers don't pay child support. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to make it easier to collect that child support. If fathers cross the state line, if they run away from their responsibility, to be able to have their paychecks have the child support taken out on the front end, to be able to deny the father certain credit privileges and other privileges until they pay the child support that they owe. I think we need a tough national system of child support enforcement and collection. That would do a lot to help families grow up with dignity and children without poverty.
Jamie, you asked that question for a reason, did you? Did you ask that question for a specific reason?
Yes.
What is it, Bob?
My dad is very wealthy. My mom, they got divorced about 6 years ago, and he's not paying the amount he should be paying. And we've been going to court for a very long time, and nothing has come out of it at all.
You know,
do you live in a different state from your father?
Yes, he lives in California.
See, that's a big problem because most of the child support laws are state-by-state laws. If the father lives in a different state from the child, it's easy to get out of. What we're trying to do is to set up some national standards so the children of this country will be protected and be taken care of.
Do you think you're getting any closer? This is a question that seems to come up every year.
Well, it's better than it used to be, and it's going to get better. If we pass our welfare reform proposal, it'll be better because people should not be able to bring children into the world, just walk off and leave them. They ought to take responsibility for the children that they bring into the world, and we ought to do what we can. And yes, we're making some progress.
Okay, and right here.
Hello.
What's your name, dear?
Sarah.
Sarah, sorry, I can't see this distance.
Mr. Clinton, I am very concerned that it is very hard to get health care in America. And one of those reasons is because not all doctors take Medicaid. And if you're on Medicaid, then sometimes the people in my area, the doctors, would not see me. For 4 months, I could not get medication for asthma, and I missed a month of school. And my school decided to penalize me, withhold all my credits for that semester, because they have a state law in Texas that says that you have to go to school a certain amount of days, and my school is not in compliance with that law. And I was wondering, what can you do to help this problem of, first of all, doctors, more incentive for doctors to take Medicaid, to see the people that need to be seen. And another one is to help the schools understand that when a person is sick, they should be more helpful instead of penalizing that student.
Double-barreled.
Well, let me say, first of all, I can do more about the first than the second. The schools, it depends upon whether the people who run the schools are sensitive, whether the counselors and the teachers really know what the kids' lives are like. And I think that, that's something we just have to keep working on, and that's beyond what the president can do, but I can do something about the first. A lot of doctors I don't think it's right for doctors not to see Medicaid patients, but the reason a lot of them don't is because in many states, Medicaid, the government health program for poor people, doesn't reimburse the doctors at the real cost of providing the service, and it's a lot of paperwork headache. One of the things that our health care reform plan will do is to put Medicaid folks in with other people in the same sorts of health care plans. So we'll provide health care coverage for everybody, for the employed, for the unemployed. Then people will be able to go into common health care plans so that doctors won't, in many cases, might not even know in the beginning whether they have a Medicaid patient or somebody who works at the store down the street. And Medicaid people will be treated with the same coverage and have access to the same kind of dignified treatment that others do. And it will really make a huge difference.
To most, put your hands down for just 1 second, because how many of you think that when you bring up a problem to the president that he can actually go and solve it? We're fairly practical about that, because there are only so many problems the president can...
Some things I can do, some things I can't do, some things I can do if other people will help me. And it's very important. That's why I try to tell you what I can do and what I can't when you ask these questions.
Okay, we'll be right back.
But we ought to say one thing about it when we come back.
Which is?
Which is what Purnell said, that Teddy Roosevelt, who was president at the early, at the first president of the 20th century, McKinley till 1901, Teddy Roosevelt said once that the greatest power of the presidency was the bully pulpit, the ability to talk about these problems and to give other people the chance to be heard. Some of you, like Cotton wants me to change a government policy here, but because of the bully pulpit of the presidency, because Peter came here, he can be heard by people who never saw a cattle ranch before and may not understand that problem. And you get to ask me all kinds of questions. You got to, Patience got to ask me the questions she wanted to ask about abortion. Sarah got to ask the question you wanted to ask about health care. That's because this is a bully pulpit. So even some things that I don't have legal authority over, it's still important for the president to talk about and to let others talk about and even disagree with the president on, because that's the way America learns and grows and debates. I mean, so I think it's very important. Like you said the question about welfare, it's important for the American people to know that the reason most people don't get off welfare is because they or their children lose health care. Not because they like being on welfare, not because they want a check from the government. Most everybody would rather be out working. But when you go to work and you lose the health care, then you wonder what are you going to do if your kids get sick. That's a real pain.
We'll be right back.
So these are important things. Is it time to go?
Yeah, we'll be right back.
President Clinton answering children's questions will continue in a moment on this ABC station.
I think it'll be worse because they say they're trying to help, but from what I've seen, they haven't been doing that much.
I hope that the job market opens up and that there's going to be a place for more people than there is now.
It wouldn't be such a great place. It would, there would be a lot of bad gas and that kind of stuff.
I'm pretty much sure that they're gonna bring out the electrical car. It doesn't use gas, it uses electricity.
A lot of the endangered species that are on the list now hopefully will be taken off the list, like the African elephant.
Then we'll start a whole new life, and then everything will be perfect. Not really perfect, but it will be better than how it is now, with everyone working together.
We could stop paying for guns and arms and defense, and we could put it towards useful things like education and food.
Instead of riding in the cars or buses, you could walk somewhere or ride your bike.
To change the world, okay, racism, anti-Semitism, anti-gay and lesbian, whatever-ism. And you have to just look to the root of all those problems and try to come up with a solution.
I'll make more job opportunities for the homeless.
And I'll try to stop pollution and have a better life so people can breathe fresh air.
To put more police on every corner, because everywhere you go, there's a crime. And I don't want it to be like that.
Welcome back to our Answering Children's Questions with the President here in the East Room. As it used to look, President Adams and Abigail Adams, the first inhabitants here, hanging up the laundry in those days. I bet you don't have as much fun around here than as you did there. Right. Such a precious room now that everybody's very, very self-conscious about what happens in here.
Oh, yes.
We had invited a young boy here today named Kevin Larm, who very much wanted to ask you a question, sir. Unfortunately, last night here in Washington, he got sick and he's in the hospital. But his brother has come, and before you meet his brother, Patrick, perhaps you'd like to see the problem which he has around the country. This is a problem that's come up in the news on several occasions. about the kind of environmental problem that you may or may not be able to do something about. Here's Kevin Larn.
I don't feel safe at all. There's just too many kids getting cancer around here. There's 11 kids in this 1 mile radius from the substation that has cancer, 11 of them. Power company says that there's nothing to those electrical magnetic fields, EMFs. I just think it's a big cover-up. I have leukemia, so we think that EMFs have got something to do with cancer. The green box in my yard is high on EMFs. In the summer, there's more electricity pumping through. I used to sit up here and talk to my friend that stood right here, which was stupid because it was in the middle of the summer, but we never knew anything about it. My mom tried to get a warning sticker put on it saying, on this, emitting high EMFs. They just never did that. The hardest part is going up to the hospital and getting treatments. I don't want to sit in the waiting room because I met 2 kids there that have already died. Father, for this month, amen.
Yes, let's really remember Joshua's family. Today is his funeral.
Joshua died just a couple days ago, which really made me hurt inside. I just don't want any more kids to go through this.
Well, Kevin comes from Omaha, and as I said, he's in the hospital here this morning, sir, but his brother Patrick is here. Patrick, you want to talk to the president?
I want to ask you his question. I have heard that recent studies have linked EMFs to childhood cancers. Other countries, such as Sweden, are passing laws to set standards as our president. Can you help lower EMFs so hopefully some childhood cancers can be prevented?
That's something that we can do something about. We had a study in 1990 which was inconclusive about it, but you're right, Sweden has concluded that EMFs do lead to higher rates of cancer. So I have asked the person who runs the Environmental Protection Agency for our government to do a review of this and to make a report to me in the near future to try to make a decision about what we should do. I think we've got to see, you know, what the best available evidence is, but I frankly was somewhat impressed by the arguments made by the Swedes. We just have to look into it and see whether we think there's honestly evidence there, and if there is, then we have to take action, and we're looking into it. And you tell your brother to hang in there.
You can probably tell him yourself, sir. I have a suspicion he's in a Washington.
Kevin, I hope you're watching us, and we're praying for you and pulling for you.
Mr. President, you know, it occurs to me, at least, listening to all these kids ask their questions today, that they're in touch with problems that you may be out of touch with sometimes. Here you are in the White House, you're surrounded by an enormous entourage that time. Do you ever feel out of touch?
Yes, but that's one reason I really work hard to get out into the country and to walk the streets. Like I went to New Hampshire last week, had a town meeting in Nashua, and then I walked the streets in Keene, New Hampshire, and just shook hands with people and talked to them and listened to them. And when people come to see me in the White House, I always ask them what the cab drivers are talking about. You know, because it's so easy for the president to get out of touch with what real people are thinking. I mean, it's a wonderful life, but you can see it's not a normal life. So you get really isolated, and you have to work to avoid it.
One other thing I cannot help but have noticed, there hasn't been a question this morning about whitewater. We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching this program. Kids are pretty smart. There was a lot to think about. Talk it over. Maybe your children have some good ideas for the country Mr. Clinton should know about. And kids, if you write a letter to the president, you'll get one back. Here's his address. President Bill Clinton, The White House, Washington, D.C., 20500. I'm Mary Alice Williams on behalf of all the employees of 9X and their families. Thanks for watching.
We've only got about a minute left.
Talk to you more about the prayer question.
Okay. I must say that this year's group is incredibly eager and determined to answer your question. We've only got a minute or so left. You want to try to say something to them all?
Yeah, if you want to take one more question.
I don't think we have time, to be perfectly honest.
And then I'll try to answer everyone who didn't get to ask a question. When you go through the line or when we go visit, then I'll try to answer your question.
One thing I can tell you about the president, he's hard. Once you get him, when the broadcast's over, grab him. He'll be here all afternoon. He'd drive his staff crazy. Go ahead, sir. Final comments?
Well, first I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank you for your questions, and I want to thank you for caring enough about all the things you raised. And I just want to encourage you in your lives. You know, we've got a big job to do in this country. And I have a big job to do to try to create more jobs and more opportunity. But we also have to have more people like you who really care about their friends and neighbors and family members. We have to rebuild our country from the ground up. Safe streets, strong families, better schools, and a better chance. And I owe that to you to do my best, but I need you to do your best too. Heather, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, I just suddenly remembered. Somebody told me Heather has a handleable question.
Well, I have a fun question for you. And I know you used to run in Arkansas, so I think you will like it. My favorite restaurant is McDonald's too. What do you get when you go there?
What do I get when I go there? Normally an Egg McMuffin or something for breakfast. Those are the big meals I ate at McDonald's. My daughter and I used to go there sometimes on Sunday morning before Sunday school, and then Hillary and I would go and pick her up and we'd go to church. But we love to have McDonald's Egg McMuffins on Sunday morning.
I must say that's the first smile I've seen on Heather's face all morning. So
I'm glad you smiled, Heather. You made me smile too. You have a wonderful smile.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having us in, and thank you all for coming. You can all come and say hello to him in person now. Okay? Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. I'm aware that Congress...
Thank you, Nicole.
This has been an ABC News special. President Clinton answering children's questions. Transcripts send $10 to Journal Graphics, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203. To order a video cassette version of ABC News President Clinton Answering Children's Questions, use your Visa or MasterCard and call 1-800-ABC-7500. The cost is $19.95 plus $3.95 for shipping and handling. This has been a special presentation of ABC News. This has been a special presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.